So he was looking for a way to create energy, to process energy, and how to distribute it.
Oh, got something levitating in there.
They move through this thing called time and space. They actually traverse through multi-dimensions.
It sounds like this technology is something that we have to be spiritually advanced enough to be able to use it.
The crafts are ready now, but we're waiting for the consciousness of the people to raise up high enough and to start accepting these gifts that we want to give to them. When you tune yourself high enough and you get into the mind space instead of the brain space, instead of logic or instead of reasoning, you just get up to a sense of knowing. You know who and what you are, that you're a creative, immortal, infinite being.
If the carrot photos and documents are, it's a matter of record that revolutionary forms of aircraft have been attempted in the years after World War II.
Rather than reverse engineer alien technology, most companies all the way back in the 1950s simply created their own technology from scratch.
In 1953, Avro Canada demonstrated Project Y2.
Yes, a genuine flying saucer.
The Avro car was an 18-foot saucer that used a turbo rotor for upward propulsion. But even after spending millions of dollars in research and development, the craft could hover only up to 8 feet at a maximum speed of 20 knots. Other disc-shaped craft all proved unstable, unflyable, and dangerous. But one man claims to have helped build a successful flying disc, not for any government, but for a private organization in Oklahoma.
I had an experience on board this 45-foot craft.
Ralph Ring is a technician who worked closely in the 1950s and 60s with Otis Carr, an inventor who claimed to be a protege of Nikola Tesla. Carr believed he could build a working flying disc, and Ralph Ring asserts they succeeded.
Ralph, how did you meet Otis T. Carr?
A friend of mine introduced me to a group called Understanding that was studying stuff like science. They brought Carr and his entourage out, and we got up there and brainstormed, and we decided to get together and build spaceships.
1958, Oklahoma. Otis Carr starts construction of the OTC-X-1, a 45-foot flying saucer. He describes his invention on Long John Neville's New York radio show in 1959.
We have a truly space vehicle that does not burn up its energy in a few seconds. Could make a trip very easily as other aerial transportation systems from here to Baltimore or from here to the moon.
Carr claimed to have been shown secret theories and techniques of Nikola Tesla. There is no independent corroboration of Carr's story. Later, Carr claimed to have seen 3 electrically charged UFOs, which inspired him to use Tesla's theories to create a new form of propulsion.
We can accelerate with tremendous velocity.
I was selected, and I had 2 other engineers with me when we got on board.
Ralph and 2 engineers were the first passengers.
I had an experience on board of this 45-foot craft.
Could you describe the experience?
Sure. When we got on board, and Carr said, what we're going to do is we're going to vibrate this craft to that particular frequency, the color of aquamarine. So they fired it up, and this thing turned into this beautiful, brilliant aquamarine. The whole craft inside was all lit up. And then he said, okay, that's it. He says, come on down to debriefing. That's the end of the experiment.
Ring remembers the entire experience lasting only 15 seconds. But that short period of time encompassed something much more phenomenal.
And he said, what you did was you went downrange 10 miles and you came back. You resonated here for about 5 to 10 seconds, and where you were was probably equate to about 15 minutes. He said, well, check your pockets. And we had these little jumpsuits on, and we emptied our pockets out. And there were stones and sticks and grass and everything. We piled it up on his desk. He said, well, where'd that come from?
The debris Ring found in his pocket was allegedly from an area 10 miles from the testing site. He asserts he did not have it before the testing of the craft.
How come we don't remember that? And he said, well, because the brain, it's reached its optimum capacity.
Were there any external witnesses, extrinsic to the event itself?
Yeah. He was a police officer in Apple Valley at the time. And him and his buddy saw this craft. I looked up on my email, and the guy says, did you have jumpsuits on? And yeah. And he says, well, I think we saw you guys. I mean, you just were there for a few minutes and you left.
They had no idea what was going on. They felt the vibration. 2, there was a bright blue light. 3, they wound up 10 miles away with no sense of movement or any memory of flying there. What does that sound like? It sounds very much like an alien abduction. Otis Carr was using the same techniques that alien abductors use.
Could we talk a little bit about, what the fundamental principle was or is that makes...
Well, the simple explanation I can give you is you reach a resonant frequency of anything and you then become, you synergize with it. You become kind of one with it.
Because Ring is not a scientist, he has a limited understanding of Carr's theories, other than that Carr believed objects could be moved through space and time by creating a resonant frequency with a predetermined location. Resonance is the specific pitch that triggers an exaggerated oscillation in an object. Every object has its own specific resonant frequency. For example, a tuning fork in the key of C has little effect on a tuning fork in the key of D. But if both tuning forks are in the same key, striking one will cause the other to vibrate in sympathy. Another example is a crystal goblet which can be made to resonate so violently at a certain note that it will actually shatter.
We have to remember that sometimes out-of-the-box thinking is very difficult to accept, and there were many great thinkers in the past whose ideas we could not accept. People actually laughed at Einstein when he came up with relativity. When the father of American rocketry, Louis Goddard, proposed the idea that we would one day be in orbit and in space, people thought this would never happen. We would never go into space. So I would be reluctant to dismiss Ralph Ring's claims that there are different energies out there that we have yet to tap into.
Carr's theories are so removed from accepted laws of physics that they seem like science fiction. But when experiments producer John Tyndall applied resonant frequency to an object in his laboratory, he was amazed to discover that at least part of what Carr claimed may be valid.
I don't know what kind of resonant frequency Otis Carr was using, but I've set up basically an acoustic levitation chamber that's going to use resonant frequencies to levitate this little flying saucer. This is an acoustic levitation chamber. Basically, I'm going to take this little foam cup and hopefully get it to hover and fly around inside just by using sound waves. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this into a resonance chamber.
The resonance chamber has 3 speakers placed on the top, the side, and the back, reflecting the 3 dimensions of space.
I have X, Y, and Z axes that I can control from these 3 oscillators. It's amazing how much and how little energy you need once you hit it. Ah, see? Here it is.
Wow.
The oscillators are tuned to the resonant frequency of the chamber, which vibrates in sympathy to the tone being generated by the speakers and amplifies it. The intense vibrations set up a standing wave inside the chamber. The cup is actually riding the crest of the standing wave, not unlike a surfer rides the crest of an ocean wave.
There you have it.
Incredible. Wow. Can you turn it upside down again?
Well, we'll try.
There you go.
Wow.
Nice.
Wow.
John Tyndall has demonstrated that sound waves can move or levitate an object, which Carr claimed was how he intended to propel his saucer.
When you do hit the resonant frequency, all heck breaks loose. All bets are off.
How exactly would this relate to the Otis T. Carr experiments and UFO technology?
So if he has stumbled upon some sort of ether resonant frequency that we haven't stumbled upon, then there could be some strange things come out of that.
I think it's a big stretch. It doesn't fit any of the existing scientific models that we have, but this idea of finding a resonant frequency to capture, collect energy is an interesting idea.
Theory like this, using sound waves to move an object, might have seemed preposterous 25 years ago, but imagine what we might have in another 25 years.
This till the end because it shows magnetic resonance and how it can levitate things. And it proves my point and proves Carr's point and Tesla's. Not that it needs to be proven, but it does prove it.
Good, good.
And then I'm going to take this one out
And then,
put this one in.
yeah, you're going to put this. We're not going to play this one because then that one. This we're not going to play.
Welcome again to the first talk at the Retro UFO Conference, number 3 here in Landers, California. I'm Guy Malone, and I'm bringing up Ralph Ring to give our first lecture today. I've got a 10-page bio on his accomplishments and stuff. I'll hit a little bit of highlights for you, just bring him up and let him do the talking. But Ralph Ring is, no doubt, he's a brilliant inventor and a technician who, as a young man in the late 50s, he worked closely with Otis T. Carr, who is a disciple of the great inventor Nikola Tesla. We talked about him earlier. They built a number of successful flying discs that you could actually get on and go from one place to the other. And back then in the 50s, they were on the verge of saucer technology 50 years ago until government agents forcibly shut down their project. But Ralph himself, who we're going to hear from, he personally co-piloted a 45-foot disc, a distance of 10 miles, arriving at their destination instantly, and then made a return trip as well. And what they found when they were doing this is that they were trying to present the government some solutions to the problems we face today, but what they found when they were shut down is the government wasn't interested in solutions and they weren't interested in answers. They were only interested in nuclear energy and things that would be wasteful. But Ralph is going to share with us some of the things that we've known for 50 years now that could have helped our environment and helped our planet in a major way if we had heeded and followed what was going on then. And it's interesting because Ralph is full circle. 50 years ago, right now, he actually came here to the Integratron, or before there was the Integratron, but he came and personally met George Van Tassel, and he brought him some materials and technology and equipment of Tesla nature that he brought here to George Van Tassel. I think you said you brought it here because your wife wanted it out of the house?
Yeah, we were visited by people that okay. Yeah. You know how, okay.
Yeah. Please welcome Ralph Ring today to lecture.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for coming. I want to thank the Source for bringing us all together. I got a lot of different things to tell you. I'm going to run through a few of them rather quickly because they can be seen on the internet, and all you have to do is type in either Project Camelot or Google Ralph Ring, or just type in Ralph Ring and you'll get a lot of information that I may not be able to cover, or for some of you, you've already heard it. I want to give you some different information today that I haven't covered in any of my talks. Marcia, do you want to start that? This is a shot on the History Channel.
Not for any government, but for a private organization in Oklahoma.
I had an experience on board this Spacecraft.
Among other people that have asked for me to talk, like the Discovery Channel and a few other educational systems, the History Channel asked me if I'd talk to them, and they came to our home. We live in Las Vegas, and they brought a crew of about, not yet, sorry. You'll have to excuse us. We're kind of new at coordinating things here a little bit. This is Marcia Brown, my assistant, and she's been with me forever. This is my wife, Ruthie, here. Could you stand up a minute? And I was totally retired. I spent 35 years as a locksmith. And I said, no, I'm not going to try anymore to convince people that life is simple, life is easy, and everything we can do better by following the laws of nature. And I tried to get people interested in alternative energies and everything, and it just, yeah, well, that's interesting, but it never went anywhere. So I kind of retired. Well, she wouldn't let me retire. She said, you've got a passion. You're no good to me around here because you're always fiddling with
new ideas and so forth. So you better go for your passion because you're not doing me any good. So she put me on the road. Project Camelot, which I wanted to thank as well in my opening, I didn't get a chance to, as well as the Harrises, Barbara and Rob Harris. I wanted to thank them for inviting us here. She decided to push me out and say, go for it. And I was really reluctant and scared because everybody that I had met in the past is, oh yeah, well that's real, but then they'd say that couldn't be. It couldn't be. But I swear to you, everything I'm about to tell you today is absolute truth. There's no, in fact, everything is truth, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Anyhow, this is Ruthie, and that's Marcia, and this is me, and I'll do the best I can to give you some ideas. That was the History Channel. They showed up with 35 people, a big film crew and a big motor bus and everything, and they spent 6 hours wanting to know what I had to say. Well, I told them the operating systems of levitation, how simple it is. In nature, everything, if you look at clouds, they gather together and they hold tons and tons of rainwater suspended. That's a form of levitation. There's different types of levitation. But then when it's ready to rain, Mother Nature gives a signal. Actually, the plants do, and then down comes the billions and billions of tons of water. There is acoustical levitation. This is what you just saw. This is very infinitely related to what we were doing with CAR. We were going to advanced stages of what's known as quantum physics, esoteric discoveries. We were working in ether technology, if you will. And what that means is we were working with the cause of everything. And there's only one cause of everything. We'll kind of get into that later too. But in essence, it's, in a word, it's called magnetism. Magnetism is in everything. Every breath we take, every time we walk, we create these magnetic fields with huge amounts of energy that we're displacing. Everything in nature is in constant motion. And those energies are free. They're given to us and on this planet with the 4 elements, wind, water, earth, and fire. And the Indians knew how to use these without putting meters on them and selling them to each other. They used them very wisely and conservatively, and they respected all these laws. And but some perhaps well-meaning entrepreneurs said, well, you know, we can take and harness this energy and put meters on these homes, and man, we'll make megabucks. We'll just sell them this energy. And that's where we are today. We're being sold energy that's actually free in nature. It's always been, like we have, and always will be free in nature. The only difference is in the consciousness of the general populace. They don't realize that the programming that we're inducted to every day is kind of negative in nature. It tells us we can't do this or we won't do that. We have to brush our teeth with a certain toothpaste. We have to a certain shampoo. These things are told to us, and we kind of, oh, okay, kind of don't do. We've lost the ability to think and feel for ourselves, and that's kind of too bad. But by the time you guys leave here today, I'm praying that I'm going to interject the information to you that you will no longer doubt anything about what I'm saying or about who and what you are. And when you leave here, it's going to be a lot different than when you came. And I kind of guarantee that. Okay, I got another, this is a short trailer. The Discovery Channel came as well, and they filmed me. And we've got a whole episode, and I've got a copy of it on disc. But they haven't released it yet, so they requested that I don't show the entire thing, but I can show the trailer. So it's just a 2-minute trailer, and this is what I had to say on the trailer. There's a lot more on this one too, but this is all I can show you at this time. Thanks, Martha. Can you put on the other, the first one? Okay, for those of you that haven't seen the Project Camelot thing, she's going to run it up on the screen, and then we'll just kind of scroll down and you can see the different things. And if you really want to see it in its entirety, just go in on any computer and type in Project Camelot. And I am just one of many other dedicated people like myself that are bound and determined to get these information out to people on alternative energies. And there it is. This is Project Camelot. You just type it in. This happens to be, she's got me on the screen right now because that's me. But when you get into this and you go to interviews, there's I don't know if you can click on interviews. Maybe not, 'cause maybe we'll get lost. Anyway, you can get on interviews and there's a whole list of people that will tell you things that you just have only perhaps imagined or only dreamt about, that are real and that are true and that are functioning to this day right now. You want to just kind of just go down. Well, just keep going down. Anyway, if there's any place along here you want to stop, there's some photos or some diagrams and stuff, just let me know. This is me when I was, I had finally given up on trying to produce a craft with a group, so my wife and I went to Prescott, Arizona, and we got out of town about 20 miles to a little place called Chino Valley, and we were led there by our intuition. And intuition, by the way, is everything. That's the force that we talk about. That's the guidance system. That's the recons, if you will, whatever, guardian angels. If you use your intuition, your gut feeling, they used to call it, it will guide you compared to what you're hearing. Anyway, we went and we built a 45-foot craft underground, because we went to the building people for building codes, and they said, well, you can't have anything levitate. That's not in our books. We can't regulate that. So you know, and I said, well, here it is, and we gave him a demonstration of levitation, and he said, no, that's it defies our known laws of science, and you're sure not going to build a house because it's not in the building code. So I said, well, what can we do? I want to replicate what we did in Apple Valley 50 years, or that was in the 80s, so that was what we did in the 60s. And I wanted to replicate it in the 80s in Chino Valley. And they said, well, you're going to have to anchor it to the ground. You're going to have to put rebar, and you have to follow all the building codes. And so that's what we did. We went down underground. We went down 9 feet, and we hit solid bedrock, just a table of bedrock at 9 feet. And you'll be seeing pictures of that. It's going to be on a slideshow, and I won't probably have a chance to talk about any of it, but you'll see the underground replica of the spaceship that Carr and I and our entourage was working with. We built it. Crystals are very, very important. They hold energy, they transmit energy, and if you know in your watches, in your cell phones, everything you have, computer chips, are all crystals. And they're doing very specific jobs, and they're honed or tuned to certain frequencies, and they hold that frequency until they're disturbed or changed. And so frequencies have a very important function when you're building things. In ancient times, the architects of Europe used to build great cathedrals. Hold it there for a minute, up a little. Used to build cathedrals, churches, and everything on what's called and become to be known as sacred geometry. It's just taking the geometry that we learn in school and going to nature, going back to the natural laws with it, and understanding, well, what if I do a line this way and the wind's blowing this way? Well, then you're going to run into trouble. If you study a canyon or a cavern and the wind's blowing in a certain direction and you've studied it long enough to know that that's its course, then you go with the laws of nature and you build along those ley lines, as they're called, and nodes, as they're called, and you're not going to run into the trouble because you're working with the flow and the change of nature. She's always flowing, she's always changing. So when we built our home, we were using crystals. We happened to buy a piece of land that nobody wanted. It was on a north-facing slope of a rock-filled plateau that you'll see later on when we run the pictures. And it was facing north, and everybody said, this is Arizona, you want sunlight. If you're going to use solar, you got to face south, and you can't do this, you'll never get any water. And we heard all these things peripherally, and we thanked them for the information because we needed to know it. But then we went into our guidance system, which is our intuition, and then we studied what we know about natural law. And I was born in the woods, and we as kids, my sister and I, that's all we had was natural law. We had to either know natural law or we'd get into a bunch of trouble. So we followed what we knew about natural law. And to this day, that's the thing that's my guidance system. And it's done very, very well for me. I've up to this point been able to successfully influence people. And as you've just seen, the History Channel are now giving credits to levitation. It's acoustical, which is old because the Tibetans used to use it eons ago to levitate giant stones up the sides of cliffs using drums and giant, like didgeridoos out here, only giant horns to create sympathetic vibrations. And once you reach the resonant frequency of anything, you can change. You then have a resonance with it. You synergize with that, and you can do anything. You can move it, you can lift it, or you can change its molecular structure if you know how. Okay. So this was an ancient Indian burial site that we had around us, not where we were, but around us. And on the different peaks, and Marcia was there when we went up to the pueblos that were still crumbling down. We found medicine wheels, and we found this symbol of like Mr. Short was wearing, the cross, equilateral cross with a circle around it, is an ancient symbol. It goes back to the Druids, it goes back to Egypt. The Hopi Indians have that too, and it's very, very sacred symbol. It's similar to the one I'm wearing here. My wife bought me this in Belgium. We were over in Europe, and I saw this symbol, and she said, well, that's you, and I'm buying it for you. So I said, okay. It was very expensive because it's got a amber with a fly in it, but it's a cross, equilateral cross, and a circle. The circle represents the eternal creation that never really begins and never really ends. It goes on forever. And the equilateral cross is balance. And the further you get out to the edge and you don't pay attention to consciousness, the more you'll wobble. The more if you take a top and you touch the top, it'll start wobbling and going out of its orbit. If you leave it alone, it'll spin for 10 minutes without stopping. What I'm trying to say is that consciousness is related to us and what we think and what we do. We can change our entire world, believe it or not, by changing ourselves. We change from the inside out, not the other way around. And the way we've been taught was, well, you listen to your teacher, you listen to the TV, you listen to the radio, and it will tell you how to change, when to change, and what to change. But unless you're going into your intuition, you're staying out in a world of duality that constantly, it changes, but it goes around in circles. It recreates itself. The automobile has been around for a long time, and we're way beyond the technology that we should be on other planets right now. And we're not using that technology in that direction. We're just recreating the same old thing. That's a system of duality, like right and wrong, left and right, up and down. It's like a dog chasing its tail. It doesn't really go anywhere. Until you move in your consciousness to the oneness of who and what we really are, and I learned this in school when I first took physics in school and didn't realize what they were saying, that energy cannot be created or destroyed. That energy is everything, it's everywhere, and it goes on forever. There was never a beginning, there'll never be an end. And it wasn't till later, till I started working with people like Otis Carr and people that were into the spiritual realms of things, like Marcia Brown. She happens to be a minister along with other things. She's also a grande dame in the Knights Templar, if you will. So she's very, very well acquainted with the spiritual aspects of things. And until you get into the spirit of knowing what you're doing, you'll always be attracted back to or distracted back to the duality. Knowing is as simple as, I know I'm hungry. I know I'm sleepy. I know I'm awake. These are simple fundamental things that we overlook. We say, oh yeah, of course. That is so powerful if you stop to realize what you're saying. And in that instant, in the twinkling of an eye, you are in a state of higher consciousness because you are knowing what you're doing. You're not guessing. If you are down in duality, like religion, for example, or like science, for example, they'll give you a point of belief, like, here it is, this is real. This is real. Can you believe it? Oh, yes, I do believe that. But then will come a counterbalance. And this is the way nature works. You will always counterbalance until you reach the equilateral cross, the balance, the 0 point, if you will. Right in the center of those crosshairs is the 0 point. That's where we belong. That's home to all of us. And until we get back there, we're always going to be out here believing or disbelieving, because here you've put everything into, I believe in this, boy, this is really it. And along comes this side and says, no, you don't. No, take a look at this. You see this? They did that. And they'll cause you to disbelieve. So it's a counterbalance. The way nature operates is constantly trying to rebalance. We were born perfect. Everything about us is perfect. We've just been led by our distractions to think otherwise. And what that simply means is we've got distracted to the point of not realizing that, I've lost my place here. I forgot what I was saying. About the 0 point. When you, huh?
We get distracted away from it.
Yeah, you get distracted away from who and what you are. Thank you. Anyway, well, you know, I'm just a mirror up here. I'm just reflecting everything I know, you know inside, and I'm going to prove it to you, because you're the same as me and I'm the same as you. We're all the same, only I just happen to have broke through this veil of forgetfulness or denseness, if you will. And I broke through that density and saw beyond what the duality is.
Oh, when did that happen?
Well, it happened with when I met Otis Carr. Or, well, a little before I met Otis Carr.
Around the time you met Otis.
Yes, Yes. And I know you're here to hear about the spaceship, and that's coming up, and I got a lot to tell you about that. I just wanted to give you this background on consciousness because we could have not did what we did, and you're about to see that, without raising or expanding, if you will, a better word, expanding our consciousness out. I get lost sometimes. The oneness. Oh, who and what we are. In school, I learned that energy cannot be created or destroyed, and then I realized, well, wait a minute, aren't we all energy? And I realized, and I went into my studies, and we are truly. If you look through a microscope, and then get into an electron microscope at any part of your body, any tissue in your body, and you go down to nothing but energy. And that's who and what we are, is energy. So that equates to what Marcia shared with me a long time ago, that we're spiritual beings having a physical human experience, not the other way around. We're not humans having a spiritual experience. It's the other way around. And I'm sure you all have heard that or seen bumper stickers to that effect. Well, that's where it is. That's real. That's really true. What is operating these vessels that we have? These are machines, and they're operated by a computer called the brain. And that's all it is a computer. It's just like the PC that we have at home or the laptop. But it has a capacity, and it has a job, a responsibility to take care of itself. So your machine, your computer, constantly monitors your system, all your organs, your temperatures, your humidity, and it adjusts and readjusts, always seeking balance. That's Mother Nature's job, to make sure that everything keeps rebalancing itself, because it's no good unless it is balanced. But it has a capacity. And a few years ago, we reached a maximum capacity of the brain. It only goes so far, and then it doesn't want to hear anything about spaceships, UFOs, higher consciousness, metaphysics, spiritualism. No, that's not me. That's not my real. But it is reality. It goes up into the mind, and that's when you expand your consciousness, or you raise your consciousness enough, knowing who and what you are, that you are endless, eternal energy that's been around forever. You'll be going on forever, and this is a stopping point. This is like a schoolroom. We stopped off here to learn some things of what's called being human, or 3D in effect. And we think. And there's a difference between thinking and knowing, and I really want to point that out. But we think we're real. And it's actually the other way around. Reality is not what we think. Reality is what it is. We get glimpses of it. When we go to sleep at night, and we go into what's called a dream state, we have a freer and more abundant realization of, I know I'm scratching my hand, I'm sorry. She's trying to tell me not to scratch my hand. Sorry. I have little habits. Anyway, free and dreams, yeah. It's like the dream state. That's closer to reality than what's out here. Because what's out here, and we say, no, that's real. I can touch this, and that's real. No, what you're doing is you are perceiving a reality, not reality. It is a segment that is created by us. Nothing else. All this out here doesn't exist except in our mind. These are, in a sense, illusions. And I know you heard that one before, and I know you're saying, this guy's going off in the no-no land here, but it's true. And when you research what I've been talking about, and you go home and look into illusion and stuff, you'll find out what I'm saying is true. That these little cameras, these little things called optic nerves, retinas, cones, and and rods back here are vibrating. Everything is vibrating at certain frequencies. And these little guys up here are vibrating at 14.5 cycles per second, hertz. And they're picking up everything, saying, well, this is real. This is real. And it is. But reality is based on one reality, truth. Everything is real in frames of reference, depending on where you are and how you perceive it. If you look at something one day and you'll say, oh, that's not so hot. And you'll look at it the next day and it's changed. Oh, that was delicious, or something to that effect. Things change, not because they change, it's because we change. And we have overlooked that. We think the world's changing out here, and it isn't. It's changing internally. We are changing the world as we look at it. And these little cameras, when you raise your consciousness, and I'll show you how to do that so every one of you will be able to do it and expand it out to where you won't even believe it. And because we're doing this, Marcia and Ruthie and I are actually moving consciously, dimensionally, through different dimensions, which is not sci-fi, it's not anything, it's just a word, dimensions. It's our consciousness. Because we know we're learning how to do this. And you might want to write something down here that might be of interest to you, that Marcia and I have been studying for months and months and months now, as well as Ruthie. If you type this into your computer, it's called Conclave, C-O-N-C-L-A-V-E, 2005. And I don't even think you have to put .com. You might, but I don't think so. And the screen that will come up is a program called The Reconnection. And this is a dedicated group of beings, whether they're physical or astral or extraterrestrials, it doesn't matter, because what they're giving you through these discourses and through this information is just what I'm giving you, the truth of who and what we really are. And they'll prove it, and you'll prove it as you go through these lessons together, if you can stand with them long enough. Most people will say, oh, I've been there, done that, because it sounds similar to what we've thought we knew. So we want to discard it. And Marcia and I, when we started, we said, well, you know, we've been around quite a while, and Marcia and I studied metaphysics and stuff. We said, well, it looks similar, but then we started realizing that our consciousness was raising through reading this to the point of this synergy started happening. Marcia has a favorite word for staying on course. When we get off balance out of this grid that I talked about, she says, she's always telling me, remember, stay pregnant, because either you're pregnant or you're not. There's no choice. There's only one way or the other. And so, and it catches me. There's nothing I can do but get back on course or I'm in trouble. So this synergy happens when we stay in this consciousness, and it's like your body starts chilling. I don't know how to explain, chilling or vibrating, or I don't know what you'd call it, but it becomes like a sense of joy. And everything we do is joyous. Everything we do is good, is happy, is loving, because we've learned to train ourselves that there is nothing else but goodness. In all of the multiverse, and we even learned to change that word from universe, meaning one, to multiverse, meaning many, that everything is one and everything is goodness. We've been led to believe, well, this is good, this is bad. No, if you look at something long enough, you'll see the goodness in everything. There is really, really nothing but goodness. Even the accidents we see, and we saw a fatal accident on our way over here. Even that fatal accident, we wanted to say, because of our training, oh my God, and go through all the things that we normally do when an accident occurs, and that those poor families, those poor people. That's true, but that's in a frame of reference. There's a greater truth, and that greater truth is, you can keep running them slow if you want, so that see. The greater truth is that nothing can happen to us unless we let it happen, unless we enable it to happen. Nothing. There is nothing, no way, anything to fear, but fear itself is it Churchill that said that? And Roosevelt, sorry, thank you. And everything is true in the same context, because anything outside of truth that we call falsehood is only the idea of falsehood. It doesn't really exist. And when we say we tell a lie, we're not telling a lie, we're creatively thinking. We are doing things differently on different levels. Where we get in trouble is our guilt and our fear of what we're saying and how we're saying it. But if we know, and that's consciousness, if we know what we're doing, and we lie to cops all the time when they stop, I wasn't going that fast. I mean, you know, it's a little lie, but it's not. You're creatively thinking, how am I going to get out of this ticket? And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Well, anyway, I'll get to the spaceship now. That's a little bit about consciousness. And I've got a lot more to tell you about it, and I'll try to feed some as I go, but I know you want to hear about our experience. I learned about natural law when I was a kid. We lived in the woods, a place called Paradise, California. It's up above Chico, California. And we used to walk back and forth to school about 7 miles every day, round trip. And the first experience that I can remember with running into natural law was an anthill about this high of these ants that were not doing anything but minding their own business, doing their own thing. But I had to stick a stick in there and I had to find out what they were doing. And they decided to attack me with this acid. They kind of spit it at you. And I guess it's like fire ants. And I, all the way home for another hour or so to get home, I was just burning up with these ants stinging me. But in keeping with what I just said, that everything is good, at that point it didn't feel so good, and it didn't feel like it was good, it felt like it was bad. But later, when I thought about it, and the stinging went away after you know, putting apple butter or whatever we used in those days on stings, I sat and I thought, what in the world happened there? And what happened was a lesson. That's all. That's all we have is lessons. There's nothing else. And that lesson was pay attention, be careful, and always respect everyone's domain, every kingdom. The ants, the birds, the beasts, they all have their own set of rules, natural laws that are guiding them. And when you interfere at right angles, instead of coming in collectively in harmony with them, you create a disturbance that they are apt to react to. And that's what the ants did to me. So I learned, don't fool around with Mother Nature. Just start to understand what natural law was all about. From there, I got into school. The physics teacher was saying bumblebees can't fly. And I was puzzled because it was on the second floor of the schoolroom. This is in Santa Cruz, California. And I looked out the window and there's a big bumblebee staring me right in the face. And this guy was telling me they can't fly. And here's this bumblebee saying, yes, I can, yes, I can. So I decided to go back to nature. And I went, basically, I stopped my academic education there because I was learning more from observation and doing things than I was from reading books. And it's the same as religion in a sense. Carl Jung, and you probably heard, I'm sure you all heard of Carl Jung, once said, Marcia, you got to help me here. Religion is, can you find it? religion, huh? Can't find it? Oh, it's up here. Okay. I got to find this because it's important. Anyway, so I decided to go back to nature, and I started studying lizards, and I found out lizards levitate, and bumblebees, and I said, well, wait, how come the teacher was saying that this can't happen, and yet it happens? I ran into a guy by the name of Arthur Aho, brother of Wayne Aho, who worked together with us. He was part of the entourage that worked on the spaceships in Apple Valley. He wrote a book called Tomorrow's Energy Need Not Be Fuel. I got a copy of it here if anybody wants to see it or take down any notes. And in there, or in relation to that publication, he told me and showed me that bumblebees, your teacher's right, give him credit. He's a good teacher. Don't say he's wrong or bad or anything, because that's his optimum understanding. He went as high as he could with the brain. That's all he knew. But let me show you. Bumblebees don't fly aerodynamically, they levitate. And the way they levitate is the beating of their wings creates frequency changes. And right along next to their larynx is a little hollow cavity, just a hollow tube. And these vibrations go into that tube and resonate. And they build up a strong magnetic field that creates like a magnetic bubble around the bumblebee. And he's created his own world. He's freed himself from what we call gravity. And he goes around in his own little world. Hummingbirds do similar things. There's lizards that do similar things. They all create their own world by raising their vibratory rate and resonating with their resonant frequency around them and changing it. And they do it all day long. So I learned a little bit about levitation. I went into the Army. I was inducted in Fort Ord, California. My next experience with resonant frequency came when we had to go over to the firing range. We had to cross this wooden bridge every day, and we had to double time to get over there. And every day, the bridge would collapse. These boards would fall off. The whole darn bridge would fall apart. And we called the engineers in. They'd repair it, but they couldn't figure out why until there was a young science student that was one of the recruits that we had. He said, that's simple, that's resonance. He says, whenever you reach the resonant frequency of something, you're going to change it, just like I mentioned before. And this cadence on the bridge got to resonate with the bridge itself, and it became one, and it started falling apart. Duh! So I learned more and more about resonance. Then I heard about the Seattle-Tacoma Narrows Bridge up in the state of Washington. And it started, because of the wind, it started to sway back and forth. And they said, whoa, wow, it better stop pretty soon. What are we going to do? Well, it happened to get into the resonant frequency of its surroundings, and it just went until it collapsed. The whole bridge just fell apart. Again, resonant, again, matching anything, you can change it. Okay, knowing that, and what I did, oh, you found it? Okay. Carl Jung, the psychologist mystic Carl Jung once said, religion is a defense against a religious experience. In other words, true spirituality is built on first-hand personal encounters with truth, not lofty doctrines that are passed from one generation to the other. In other words, you can throw the books away, just go to where you want to learn truth, and it'll come to you. It's dying to come to you. And that's what we found out, that you no longer, after academia, you no longer have to chase after anything. If you want to know something bad enough, if you want to do something bad enough, there's nothing to it. Who's that Sinatra that sang that song, nothing to it but to do it? And that's true. It's a true thing. You just go for it. and all of a sudden, your world will change right in front of you. Like parking places, which I know some of you have already experimented with that. Oh, I gotta have a parking place because I've only got 10 minutes and stuff. And then you get still and just forget about it. And just as you pull in, somebody's pulling out and you get the parking place. There's no accidents. There's never any accidents. In all of the multiverse, things happen for reasons. And those reasons are because we change the molecular structure, we change the composition, we change the vibratory rate of who and what we are. 15 minutes? Okay, God. All right.
Let's go back to your background.
To the background?
Mm-hmm. Your background. How you got to Otis Clark.
I've only got 15 minutes.
Well, you got to go. They want to hear about
Okay, I'm going to start double timing here. Okay. I got out of the service. I went into engineering. I tried to get into engineering school. They put me back in the infantry. I didn't have enough clout to get into engineering, so they sent me to Guam and into Korea. I got wounded in Korea. I got back to the States. I got discharged with a degree in heavy weapons, heavy machine guns, heavy mortars, and heavy artillery. And I looked in the San Francisco News for a job. No job. I didn't know what in the world I was going to do. But when I was on Guam, I learned how to skin dive. And I got under the water and I saw a whole new world of things to do under there. Okay, this is the underground house. Just let it run. As you go through, this is what we bought, a piece of land that had nothing but rocks on it. And as you progressively see, this is where we built the replica of the 45-foot craft underground. I'll let that go on while I'm talking. Let's see, where was I?
Where was that located?
This is in Prescott,
Chino Valley.
Chino Valley, just above Prescott, Arizona.
Oh, Arizona.
Uh-huh.
You're skin diving.
Oh, skin diving. So I ran an ad in the paper. I made some business cards up, and I created a skin diving business almost overnight. It was a success because nobody was doing it in those days. And I built it up to the point where I could successfully go back home because my dad and my uncle said, "Don't come back unless you are somebody. We don't want to hear from you. You didn't want to go to school. Now what are you going to do?" So I had to come back down to Newport Beach, where they lived, with a credible way of supporting myself, which was my diving business. And I continued my diving business until I met my wife and we had children. And I was out diving every day, sometimes weeks at a time. A dive boat came up alongside of me from the U.S. Divers Company. That's Jacques Cousteau, created the Aqualung. I didn't realize I was that far into it. I'm sorry. Asked me if I wanted to be a research diver for U.S. Divers. I said sure, because it'd be closer to home. They were about 2 blocks away from where we lived. So I went to work as a research diver for U.S. Divers, and the job became kind of stressful and dangerous as far as my wife was concerned. I was having a ball, but I had some dangerous things happen. And she says, "No more. You got kids to raise. We need a dad at home, and we need somebody to take out the trash. So you better find another way." So one morning, she put a newspaper on front of my cornflakes that had an ad circled for a laboratory technician. And I said, "Well, I'm not qualified. I'm a machine gunner and a diver." She says, "Go check into it," because on my hobby and part-time, I was building all these little things that worked out of natural law. I'd build little things, little radios that had worked with no energy, little things that moved around the house with no energy. And she says, "Just take that talent and go down there. It's a research development company." So I went down. There was nobody there. It was noontime. I was looking for a job. I went by Dr. Weinhardt, was the head. This was Advanced Kinetics in Costa Mesa, California. And he said, "What are you doing?" "I'm looking for a job." And he says, "No, they're all out to lunch. What do you do?" I said, "I'm a machine gunner and a diver." And that didn't go over too well. But I know natural law. Just ask anything you want to know about how nature works. Just ask me, and I'll I can make it work. And I said, my basic fundamental interest since I was born has been magnetism. And he said, magnetism? I said, yeah. He says, we got a job for you. You go to work tomorrow morning, because an engineer just quit, and I didn't even fill out an application. And I went to work for Advanced Kinetics as a lab tech on an experiment of firing an electron that's out of a, like your television set that fires electrons to your screen, the old ones. And he said, all you have to do is get this electron through this magnetic field. There's a magnet, positive, negative, through this field without deflection. Just get one of them through, and that'll be the end of the job. That'll be success. I had a giant oscilloscope. I had giant cameras. I was taking pictures. No matter how much force I put on this little electron, it would go to positive or negative. I'm kind of hurrying here because I want to get to the craft and how we levitated it and everything. The next bench over was working on levitation. They were using iron cores, copper wiring, and levitating steel balls. Burning up megabucks every day, burning things out. So I went home, and on my living room floor, where I usually played with my toys, I started putting together my experiment of the magnetic thing. I took a television apart and got the tube out, built it up, and on the first shot, I was successful to get that electron through the field. And the way I did it was because of my knowledge of natural law, that nature never uses force. She always meanders, always negative and positive, right and left, but she's always asymmetrical, never symmetrical, or very seldom. So what I did, I pulsed the signal. That means instead of sending it through with this tremendous force, I started and then I started and delayed the signal. And that little electron started spiraling. And it went from negative to positive right through the field without deflection. I took pictures, I wrote it up. I went over and got a 15-inch woofer speaker. I put eventually a ping pong ball in the center of it with a little audio amplifier I picked up for 25 bucks. And there was levitation. I could levitate this ping pong ball. Wrote that up, took pictures, took it into Dr. Weinhardt. He says, no way, no. We're a research and development center, and we're paid to look for answers, not find them. Well, yeah, but, and I said, yeah, well, and I'm just a technician, but can't we show these to the engineer? No. Go back to work. You can't talk about this, da-da-da-da. Long story short, I met Carr because I had to quit that job because I got bored. It wasn't going anywhere. It was like a dog chasing its tail. It wasn't going anywhere. And I knew what levitation was, and I knew what natural law was. So there was a group called Understanding. I was introduced to a group called Understanding, Daniel Fry, Costa Mesa, California, that said, who are you? What are you doing? I said, well, I've always wanted to build floating homes. Your habitation and your transportation should be one vehicle. And you take the wheel off the ground and turn it this way, and you can go anywhere, a few feet, a few miles, a few hundred, or a few thousand miles. Anywhere once you know who and what you are. And he said, well, there's a guy out in Oklahoma wanting to do the same thing, and his name is Otis Carr. He was a protege of Tesla, and he's building spaceships to do the same thing you're talking about. And he said, running into trouble, we're going to bring him out here. And they did with his entourage. He had there was 12 of us. He had engineers and public relations and all the people that go with a little group. Came out, they put us up at Lake Arrowhead. We'll find you a place so you can work. We got up there, and I got into mind consciousness with Carr. He didn't operate from the brain much. We just go into stillness almost, and just start visioning and revisioning and change. We were building things with our mind 24/7, and we could see so many things that were so simple, that it obsoleted everything that we were doing and every way we were doing it on this planet. And I got that by the synergy with his consciousness and mine working together. And he says, oh, well, let's go build spaceships. So we went down the hill. They got us a place in Apple Valley, Hesperia. Trying to get it all in. It had all the facilities. It had the lab, it had the warehouse, it had offices and everything. And we started building spaceships, little levitating devices. We had 6-inch devices, we had 3 feet, 6 feet, you name it, up to 45-foot in diameter spaceships. We were, we had some funding, but for the most part, we were all volunteers and we were all putting all our time and money into it ourselves. And we wanted a manufacturer to see what we had. And we chose General Motors. And we asked General Motors to send out a rep to talk to us and meet us in Riverside, California, because we wanted to show him that we could advance that wheel, take it off the ground, which is creating all kinds of havoc with our garden down here, putting asphalt and cement on it and put it horizontally, take it off the ground. So we didn't tell them all that, but they did send a rep out to meet us in Riverside. We brought a small levitating craft and put it on the desk of the representative from General Motors, and he had his engineers and all his people there to look at it, and they looked if there was wires or were we magicians or what was going on, and it was levitating. And he said, that's what we want to do. We want to build these, and we want to house these. We want people to have gardens, rivers, parks, you name it. All these things can be done. It's dimensionally changing, nothing else. I mean, it's who and what we are when we raise our consciousness. But down in this density, in this, what's called third dimensional density, we're not going to ever get anywhere because we keep repeating the same things we've done before and before and before. So he looked at this thing and he said, wait a minute, you're going to put thousands of people out of work. They've got to feed their kids. They got jobs. You guys are the bad guys. We know who you guys are, because they thought we were going to try to, upset their apple cart. No. If people don't have to toil for a living, if they don't have to go out and punch a clock every day, they then have time to be who and what they are. They're creative talents. We've got unbelievable talent, everybody, that they've never had a chance to do. Great artists, great architects, because they've had to go punch that time clock every day. And if they didn't have to do that, we would have an abundance of talent here, that so much that we'd never have to do anything again. I don't want to hear that, Mr. Carr, take this junk out of here, you guys put them up, we'll shoot them down. That was their attitude. We went back, Carr said, we've got about 2 weeks, because they're going to be on us like flies in about 2 weeks. I know they're coming. So let's get some operational craft. We wanted to fly a large craft, 45-footers over Los Angeles, and show that, hey, we're real. That was our general idea. The first craft that we experimented with, excuse me a minute, I gotta have a drink.
You gotta stick your hand through.
Mm-hmm. Working in the lab, we had a 3-foot model made out of T6 aluminum. That's a very good grade of aluminum. It's just aluminum body. And there was a picture of it. The actual one that I stuck my hand through was on the screen a little while ago. They started vibrating it. Now, not spinning it or anything. Nothing was moving. It was vibrating. It was changing the frequency of all the energy that was held in this craft. And I touched it, and it was solid, and I kept touching it, and it was like Jell-O. I said, oh, well, that's neat. It's like Jell-O. And then pretty soon I put my hand right through. This is a metal object. And my brain said, no, you didn't do that. It can't happen. You didn't do that. It can't happen. But from my briefing with Carr and my knowledge of natural law and him telling me, no, that's the mind. That you're all energy. You synergize with that energy. You became one with that energy. You can walk through walls, you can go through the earth, you can go anywhere when you know who and what you are, which is energy. And you operate from the center out, you can do anything. If you operate the other way around, you're not going to go anywhere, but all the way around. So I was blown away. The next day, 2 days later, had another similar model, 3 foot, and we were firing it up, started vibrating. Incidentally, your hair stands up when this thing fires up. It's just really, real neat feeling. This is the inside of that underground. We fired it up, and it got to a point where right before our very eyes, I swear to you, with everything I say, sacredly hold as sacred, God and my mom and everybody, it disappeared. Right before our eyes, it was gone. And we touched the bench and everything, nothing was there. We asked Carr, where is it? He says, probably there. It's just entered, it's entered its own field. You've changed its vibratory rate. It no longer exists to these three-dimensional eyes and body that these sensors can't pick it up because the sensors to see it are in another field. 2 minutes. We got to get going. He said, I want you and 2 engineers to get on board the 45-foot craft, and I want you to go downrange 10 miles. They went down and they took a piece of land and they measured it electronically to equate to the color of aquamarine. Everything is color. Everything is in light spectrum. In vibrations, you can equate everything to color and light. They measured this base. We got on board the craft, 3 of us. In the center was a crystal ball, the laser coming up from the bottom. And you saw a similar thing just a little while ago when it was on the screen. And this resonated and changed these colors to eventually aquamarine. And the whole ship inside turned to this beautiful, beautiful aquamarine. And then Carr, we could hear him, said, okay, the experiment's over, come on down, debriefing. And we knew we hadn't gone anywhere. And we got down there and we told Carr, we didn't go anywhere, did we? And he said, that's the brain talking. He says, let me explain it to you. Empty your pockets. And we had jumpsuits on and we started emptying our pockets and we had, rocks and stones and sticks and everything. He said, where'd you get that? And we had no idea. And he said, well, it'll come to you eventually. It might take weeks, days, it might be years before this whole thing comes back to you. But what you did was you resonated up to the frequency of aquamarine, and then you teleported outside of and then back into what's called time. And he said, time, and he says, time is a measurement that man has made. In the universe and multiverse, there is no such thing as time. It's just what we perceive it to be. And he said, everything is perception. Everything we see and do is in here. It's looking out. And we can change everything by changing what's inside. So I got to close.
No, 2 weeks later, the government came and
Oh,
pushed out.
yeah, you got to hear this part. 2 weeks later, these big semi-trucks showed up with Army soldiers with guns and the black cars with FBI agents. And they said, we're shutting you guys down. Here's a piece of paper that says, you are attempting to overthrow the monetary system of the United States and can be held in high treason, and we're shutting you down and we're confiscating everything. And they went into our office, took all our files, took our little models, got a lowboy in and started loading up our 45-footers. We had 3 of them, and told us never to talk about it. Don't even think about it, because we're going to be watching you forever, because you guys can't do this. And that was the end of it. And from there, because I got to close, I'd never stopped. In those days, we had 2 moving parts. We had a counter-rotating wheels. We had one rotating clockwise and one rotating, try it, it's not easy to do. But they were counter-rotating wheels. And this created a force through what we call a U-tron, which set up in the magnetic field this levitation that I spoke of with the bumblebee. Set up its own field, and off you go.
find the principle of resonance then too?
Resonance, yes.
By the counter rotation creates a sympathetic resonance?
Yes.
To the resonance of the materials you use, or to the Schumann resonance?
Oh, more than that. It sets up, in essence, I'll just give you a quick one. The Earth is vibrating right now at 8.7 cycles per second.
Is that the Schumann resonance?
That's the Earth, yeah, that's our resonance. 878 or whatever it is, it changes. Basically, that's where we are. Once you reach that, you've freed yourself from this idea that you're just human, that we're just body and flesh. And well, I gotta go, I guess. Hang on a minute, I just gotta close. Anyway, there's a lot more to it. I'll be around if you guys want to talk to me or got questions. I'm sure you got some kind of questions to ask me. But if I don't give you anything else, I want you to leave with knowing that all of us together, me, you, we're just mirrors for each other. I happen to have stepped across to the other side and see, God, this is beautiful, man. Everything I touch, everything I do is beautiful. It's wonderful. And I would like to pass that on to you, that all you do is change your attitude. Refuse to accept anything as not being good or beautiful. And it will start happening. Is that right, Marcia?
That's totally right.
Okay. Ruthie, is that right? Okay. Well, I got a couple of witnesses. I want to thank you all for coming. If you got any questions, I'll be around. And there's a lot more to it, and I didn't get into some of the other things that you might have been interested in. But, huh? Oh yeah, on the vendors thing, I was giving them away, and I've been around to several places to ask. I've been asked, and I'm getting tongue-tied. I'm sorry. To speak. I went to Hawaii, we went to Florida, we went to Salt Lake, and I made up discs as fast as I could on my talks and gave them away to people because I wanted to get the word out, you know, just so that people could wake up and realize there's more than you can ever think there is. Well, they started grabbing 5 and 10 at a time, Marcia, right? And I had to make up more and more, and I was just operating on a very low budget, and I kept. So Marcia and my wife said, no, that you're going to have to get donations. So I said, well, I don't really like, well, the information's free, but if they'd like to donate for your materials, just say donate, right? And so they made up signs, a $10 donation or something. But there's plenty on every disc. I packed it full of stuff on every disc. If you want to know anything, including the ones that we ran here, are out on our vendors table. And I want to thank all of you for coming and listening to me.
Take just 5 or 10 minutes.